Sarah Martinez never imagined that her steady hands, trained to save lives, would one day hold a weapon that could end them from over a mile away. Growing up in a small Texas town where Friday night football was religion and military service was tradition, she always knew she wanted to serve her country. But unlike her 3 older brothers who all joined the infantry, Sarah chose a different path. She wanted to heal, not harm. At 19, fresh out of high school with top grades in biology and chemistry, Sarah enlisted in the Army as a combat medic. Her drill sergeants quickly noticed something special about her. While other recruits struggled with the physical demands and mental pressure, Sarah seemed to thrive. She could carry a wounded soldier twice her size, perform emergency surgery under fire, and maintain perfect calm when chaos erupted around her. During her advanced medical training at Fort Sam Houston, Sarah's instructors were amazed by her precision and focus. She could thread a needle in complete darkness, had memorized every bone and muscle in the human body, and could calculate drug dosages faster than most people could use a calculator. But what really set her apart was her ability to see patterns and distances. During field exercises, she could spot injured soldiers from incredible distances and navigate through complex terrain with uncanny accuracy. Her first deployment came sooner than expected. The unit was short-staffed, and Sarah found herself packed and ready for Afghanistan within 6 months of completing her training. As their transport plane descended toward Bagram Air Base, Sarah pressed her face against the small window and watched. The rugged mountains stretched endlessly in every direction. The landscape looked nothing like the flat plains of Texas, but something about the vastness felt familiar. The forward operating base where Sarah was stationed buzzed with constant activity. Helicopters thundered overhead day and night, bringing in wounded soldiers and supplies. The medical tent where she worked was a converted shipping container equipped with the most advanced trauma equipment the military could provide. Sarah quickly earned respect from everyone on the base. She saved lives that others thought were lost, worked 18-hour shifts without complaint, and never hesitated to run into danger when someone needed help. But it was during her off-duty hours that Sarah discovered something unexpected about herself. The base had a small shooting range where soldiers could practice with various weapons to stay sharp. Sarah had always been a decent shot with her standard-issue rifle, but she had never tried anything more challenging. One evening, bored and looking for something to do, she wandered over to watch some Navy SEALs practicing with their specialized equipment. The SEALs were using high-powered sniper rifles, hitting targets at distances that seemed impossible. Sarah stood quietly in the background, studying their techniques and listening to their conversations about wind speed, bullet drop, and atmospheric pressure. The mathematics reminded her of the calculations she did every day in the medical tent, just applied to a completely different purpose. When one of the SEALs noticed her watching and jokingly asked if she wanted to try, Sarah surprised everyone by saying yes. The Barrett M82 rifle was massive, weighing over 30 pounds and capable of hitting targets accurately at distances exceeding a mile. As Sarah settled behind the weapon, the SEAL instructor expected her to struggle with the weight and recoil. Instead, he watched in amazement as she adjusted the scope with confidence, controlled her breathing naturally, and squeezed the trigger with perfect timing. The target, placed 800 yards away, took a direct hit in the center ring. The shooting range fell silent. The SEALs exchanged glances, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Sarah's shot wasn't luck. It was pure skill combined with natural talent. Over the following weeks, she returned to the range whenever her medical duties allowed. Each time her accuracy improved and her range extended. Soon, she was consistently hitting targets at distances that challenged even the most experienced snipers on the base. Word of Sarah's unexpected shooting ability spread quickly through the small military community. Soldiers who had only known her as the skilled medic who had saved their friends now watched her with new curiosity and respect. But Sarah remained focused on her primary mission. She was there to save lives, not take them. The shooting range was just a hobby, a way to relax and challenge herself after long days in the medical tent. However, war has a way of changing plans and forcing people into situations they never anticipated. The region where their base was located had been relatively quiet for months, but intelligence reports suggested that enemy activity was increasing. Supply convoys were being attacked more frequently, and there were rumors of a major offensive being planned against coalition forces. Sarah continued her daily routine of treating wounded soldiers, managing medical supplies, and training junior medics who arrived as replacements. She had developed a reputation for being able to handle any medical emergency with calm professionalism. Soldiers felt safer knowing she was on the base, ready to respond at a moment's notice. But late at night, when the base was quiet and she couldn't sleep, Sarah found herself thinking about those sessions at the shooting range and wondering why. She felt so naturally comfortable behind that massive rifle. The attack came without warning on a Tuesday morning when the desert heat was already becoming unbearable. Sarah was organizing medical supplies in the storage area when the first explosion shook the entire base. Alarms immediately began blaring, and she could hear soldiers shouting orders and running to their positions. Within seconds, she was grabbing her medical kit and heading toward the sound of gunfire. The enemy had chosen their timing perfectly. Most of the base's sniper teams were out on patrol missions, leaving the defensive positions undermanned. The attackers had positioned themselves in the rocky hills surrounding the base, using the terrain to their advantage while staying hidden from return fire. Their strategy was working. Coalition forces were pinned down, unable to advance or effectively respond to the threat. Sarah reached the main defensive position where soldiers were taking cover behind concrete barriers and sandbags. The commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel James Harrison, was coordinating the defense while trying to call for air support. But the enemy snipers had positioned themselves too close to the base for helicopter gunships to safely engage without risking friendly fire. Casualties: the first wounded soldier was brought to Sarah's position within minutes. A young private had taken a bullet through his shoulder, and Sarah immediately went to work stopping the bleeding and stabilizing him for transport to the medical facility. But as she worked, she could hear the distinctive crack of sniper fire continuing to echo across the base. More soldiers were being hit, and the defensive teams couldn't locate the enemy positions to return effective fire. Through her medical training, Sarah had learned to remain calm under pressure and think clearly in chaotic situations. As she treated the wounded private, her mind was automatically processing the sounds of battle around her. She could tell from the timing and direction of the gunshots that there were at least 3 enemy snipers positioned at different elevations in the hills. The angles of the wounds she was treating confirmed her analysis. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison was growing frustrated with the situation. His soldiers were trained and experienced, but they were being outmatched by enemy snipers who had clearly studied the base layout and prepared for this attack. The radio chatter revealed that air support was at least 20 minutes away, and the base's own sniper teams were too far out to return in time to help. Sarah finished treating the wounded private and was preparing to move him to safety when another soldier was hit. This time it was Sergeant Mike Torres, one of the SEAL team members she had met at the shooting range. The bullet had caught him in the leg, and he was bleeding heavily. As Sarah worked to control the bleeding, Torres grabbed her arm with surprising strength. "Martinez, we need someone who can shoot back at those bastards," he said through gritted teeth. "Our sniper team is 30 minutes out, and we're sitting ducks until then. You're the best shot on this base right now." Sarah tried to focus on treating his wound, but Torres continued talking. "I've seen what you can do with the Barrett. You can hit anything at any distance. We need you up there." The idea seemed impossible. Sarah was a medic, not a combat soldier. Her job was to save lives, not engage in firefights with enemy snipers. But as she looked around at the defensive position, she could see the desperate situation they were facing. More soldiers were being wounded every few minutes, and the enemy was systematically picking off anyone who tried to mount an effective defense. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison overheard Torres's suggestion and immediately dismissed it. "Absolutely not," he said firmly. "Martinez is our best medic. We need her treating the wounded, not playing sniper." But even as he spoke, another explosion rocked the base, and they could hear more soldiers calling for medical assistance. Sarah completed Torres's treatment and helped move him to a safer position. But as she worked, her mind kept returning to the tactical situation they were facing. The enemy snipers were positioned at ranges between 800 and 1,200 yards, distances she had successfully engaged at during her practice sessions. The wind conditions were light, and the visibility was excellent. From a technical standpoint, she knew she could make the shots. The internal conflict was tearing at her. Everything in her training and personal beliefs told her that her role was to heal, not to harm. She had taken an oath to first do no harm, and the idea of deliberately taking a human life went against everything she had dedicated her career to achieving. But she also understood that sometimes protecting innocent lives required difficult choices. Another wounded soldier was brought to her position, this time with a severe abdominal wound that required immediate surgery. As Sarah worked to stabilize him, she realized that the number of casualties would continue to mount unless someone could neutralize the enemy snipers. The base's defensive capabilities were being systematically destroyed, and soon the enemy would have clear shots at the medical facility itself. Torres, despite his own injury, crawled over to where Sarah was working. "Listen to me, Martinez," he said quietly. "I know this isn't what you signed up for, but right now, you're the only person on this base who has the skill to end this. Every minute those snipers stay active, more of our people are going to die. You can save more lives with one rifle than you can with all your medical equipment." Sarah looked around at the chaos surrounding them. Soldiers were calling for medical assistance from multiple positions. Smoke was rising from damaged equipment, and the sound of enemy fire continued to echo across the base. She realized that Torres was right. In this situation, her ability to engage the enemy at long range could prevent more casualties than her medical skills could treat. The decision was the hardest of her life. Sarah had never wanted to be a killer, but she also couldn't stand by and watch her fellow soldiers die when she had the ability to stop it. She finished stabilizing the wounded soldier and then made her choice. Walking over to Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, she requested permission to engage the enemy snipers with the Barrett rifle from the base's armory. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison stared at Sarah in disbelief. The base was under heavy fire. Casualties were mounting, and now his best medic was asking for permission to become a sniper. The request went against every military protocol he knew, but the desperate situation demanded unconventional solutions. After a moment of intense consideration, he gave her a sharp nod. "Do it, Martinez, but I want Torres to spot for you if he can move." Sarah felt her heart racing as she made her way to the armory. The Barrett M82 rifle she had practiced with so many times was waiting for her, along with several boxes of .50 caliber ammunition. The weapon felt familiar in her hands, but the weight of responsibility was crushing. For the first time in her life, she was preparing to use her skills to end lives rather than save them. Torres insisted on accompanying her despite his leg wound. He knew the terrain around the base better than anyone, and could help identify the enemy positions. Together they made their way to the base's highest observation post, a reinforced concrete structure that provided an elevated view of the surrounding hills. The position had been abandoned earlier when it became too dangerous to occupy, but it offered the best vantage point for long-range shooting. Setting up the Barrett rifle, Sarah tried to calm her nerves and focus on the technical aspects of the shot. She had practiced this routine hundreds of times, but never with live targets who were actively trying to kill her and her friends. Torres positioned himself beside her with a spotting scope, scanning the hillsides for muzzle flashes and enemy movement. "There," Torres whispered, pointing toward a rocky outcropping about 900 yards away. "I can see the glint of a scope. He's positioned behind those large boulders on the left side of the ridge." Sarah adjusted her scope and studied the target area carefully. It took several minutes of patient observation before she caught a glimpse of movement and the distinctive shape of a rifle barrel. The enemy sniper was well concealed and clearly experienced. He had chosen his position carefully, with multiple escape routes and excellent cover from return fire. Sarah realized that she would have only one opportunity to make the shot before he relocated to a different position. The mathematics of long-range shooting ran through her mind automatically. Wind speed, atmospheric pressure, bullet drop, target movement. Taking a deep breath, Sarah settled into her shooting position and began controlling her breathing. The enemy sniper was approximately 890 yards away, positioned at a slightly higher elevation. The wind was minimal, blowing from left to right at perhaps 3 miles per hour. She adjusted her scope accordingly and waited for the perfect moment to take the shot. Through her scope, Sarah could see the enemy sniper's face partially visible behind his rifle. For a brief moment, she hesitated. This wasn't a practice target or a piece of paper with concentric circles. This was a human being with a family, dreams, and a life story just like her own. But then she heard another explosion from the base below and remembered why she was here. The shot broke cleanly, and Sarah watched through her scope as the enemy sniper collapsed immediately. There was no dramatic Hollywood-style death scene, just the sudden stillness of a threat that had been neutralized. Torres confirmed the hit and immediately began scanning for the next target. Outstanding shot, Martinez. That's one down, but there are at least two more out there. The second enemy position was more challenging to locate. The sniper had learned from his colleague's death and was being more careful about exposing himself. Sarah and Torres spent nearly 15 minutes scanning the hillsides before identifying muzzle flashes, coming from a position over 1,100 yards away. This was at the extreme edge of even Sarah's demonstrated range, but it was a shot she knew she could make. The distance required more precise calculations and patience. Sarah had to account for increased bullet drop and the effects of atmospheric conditions over the longer range. She made minute adjustments to her scope and settled in for what she knew would be a more difficult shot. The enemy sniper was positioned behind what appeared to be a natural rock formation, with only occasional glimpses of his position visible. Torres provided critical assistance by calling out wind changes and helping Sarah track the target's movement patterns. The enemy sniper was disciplined, only exposing himself for brief moments to take shots at the base below. Sarah had to time her shot perfectly to catch him during one of these exposure windows. When the opportunity came, Sarah was ready. The enemy sniper raised his head slightly to acquire a target, and Sarah squeezed the trigger with perfect timing. The shot traveled for nearly 3 seconds before finding its mark. Through her scope, she watched the enemy position go silent and still. Torres confirmed another successful hit. The third enemy sniper proved to be the most challenging. He had witnessed the elimination of his two colleagues and was now operating with extreme caution. Sarah and Torres spent over 20 minutes trying to locate his position, before Torres spotted a glint of reflected sunlight from a position nearly 1,300 yards away. This was beyond the range where Sarah had ever successfully engaged a target. The shot would require everything Sarah had learned about long-range shooting, plus a considerable amount of luck. The target was positioned at the extreme edge of the Barrett's effective range, and the smallest error in calculation would result in a complete miss. Sarah made her scope adjustments and settled into her shooting position, knowing that this would be the most difficult shot of her life. The enemy sniper was clearly an expert marksman himself. He had chosen a position that provided maximum concealment, while still allowing him to engage targets on the base. Sarah could only catch glimpses of his location when he moved to acquire new targets. She would have to time her shot perfectly, and hope that her calculations were correct. After nearly 10 minutes of patient waiting, the enemy sniper exposed himself for what Sarah knew would be her only opportunity. She controlled her breathing, steadied her aim, and squeezed the trigger with complete confidence in her abilities. The shot seemed to hang in the air forever before finally reaching its target. Through her scope, Sarah watched the distant figure collapse and remain motionless. The base fell silent except for the crackling of fires and the distant sound of approaching helicopters. Sarah's 3 shots had eliminated the enemy sniper threat and ended the attack. As she sat back from the rifle, the reality of what she had just done began to sink in. In the span of less than an hour, the medic who had dedicated her life to healing had become one of the most effective snipers in military history. The aftermath of the battle left Sarah feeling emotionally drained and confused about her identity. As the base began assessing damage and treating the wounded, she found herself caught between two worlds. The soldiers who had been pinned down during the attack looked at her with newfound respect and gratitude, but Sarah struggled with the knowledge that she had taken 3 lives in a single morning. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison called Sarah to his office the following day for a debriefing. The attack had been repelled with minimal casualties thanks to her intervention, but her actions raised complicated questions about military protocols and role assignments. Harrison was impressed by her performance but concerned about the precedent it might set. "Martinez, what you did yesterday saved lives and prevented this base from being overrun," Harrison said, reviewing the after-action reports. 3 confirmed kills at ranges exceeding 800 yards, with the longest shot being measured at 1,320 yards. Those are numbers that would impress special operations snipers with years of experience. Sarah sat quietly in the chair across from his desk, still processing the events of the previous day. She had returned to her medical duties immediately after the attack, treating wounded soldiers and helping with the base's recovery efforts. But every time someone thanked her for saving their life through her shooting, she felt a strange mixture of pride and guilt. The psychological impact of her actions was something Sarah hadn't anticipated. Her medical training had prepared her to deal with the stress of treating severely wounded soldiers and making life-or-death decisions under pressure. But deliberately ending human lives, even enemy combatants who were trying to kill her fellow soldiers, created a different kind of emotional burden. Word of Sarah's remarkable shooting performance spread quickly through military channels. Within days, she received requests for interviews from Army journalists and inquiries from special operations units interested in recruiting her. The story of the medic who became a sniper was the kind of narrative that military public relations departments love to promote. But Sarah remained focused on her primary mission as a combat medic. She continued treating wounded soldiers, managing medical supplies, and training junior medics who arrived as replacements. However, her commanders began incorporating her unique skills into the base's defensive planning. She was assigned to participate in regular sniper training exercises and was designated as a backup long-range shooter for emergency situations. Torres, who had recovered from his leg wound, became Sarah's unofficial mentor in advanced shooting techniques. During their off-duty hours, he taught her about different types of ammunition, environmental factors that could affect long-range shots, and tactical considerations for sniper operations. Sarah approached this training with the same dedication she had shown in her medical studies. The base's defensive capabilities were significantly enhanced by having a proven long-range shooter available at all times. Enemy forces in the region had learned about the deadly accurate sniper who had eliminated their attack team. An intelligence report suggested they were adjusting their tactics to avoid engaging the base directly. Sarah's personal relationships with other soldiers on the base became more complicated. Some medics felt that she had abandoned her medical mission by taking up weapons, while combat soldiers weren't sure how to categorize someone who could both save lives and take them with equal skill. Sarah found herself caught between two different military cultures with different values and expectations. The moral complexity of her situation became even more challenging when Sarah was asked to participate in offensive operations. Intelligence had identified several enemy positions in the surrounding area that posed ongoing threats to coalition forces. Military planners believed that Sarah's long-range shooting abilities could neutralize these threats more effectively than traditional approaches. Sarah spent many sleepless nights wrestling with the ethical implications of her new role. She had joined the military to serve as a healer, following in the tradition of combat medics who risked their lives to save others. But circumstances had thrust her into a position where her most valuable contribution might be her ability to kill enemy combatants from extreme distances. The request to participate in offensive operations forced Sarah to make a fundamental decision about her identity and mission. She could return to being exclusively a combat medic, treating wounded soldiers and staying out of direct combat. Or she could embrace her unexpected talents and become a specialized operator who used lethal force to protect coalition troops. After much consideration, Sarah decided that her ultimate responsibility was to protect the lives of the soldiers she served alongside. If that meant using her shooting skills to eliminate threats before they could harm coalition forces, then she was prepared to accept that role. She informed Lieutenant Colonel Harrison that she was willing to participate in carefully planned operations that could benefit from her unique abilities. Her first offensive mission came 2 weeks later. Intelligence had identified an enemy observation post that was providing information about coalition convoy routes to insurgent forces. The position was located in rugged terrain that would be difficult to assault with conventional forces, but it was within range of Sarah's proven shooting capabilities. The mission required Sarah to work with a small team of special operations soldiers who would help her reach an appropriate firing position and provide security during the operation. This was her first time operating outside the relative safety of the base, and she felt nervous about the increased risks and responsibilities. Sarah's shooting position was established on a ridgeline overlooking the enemy observation post. The target was approximately 900 yards away, positioned in a stone building that provided excellent cover and concealment. Sarah would need to wait for the enemy observers to expose themselves before she could engage them effectively. The mission required patience and discipline. Sarah and her team spent over 6 hours in position, waiting for the right opportunity to engage the targets. During this time, she observed enemy activities through her scope and provided valuable intelligence about their numbers, equipment, and procedures. When the opportunity finally came, Sarah was ready. Two enemy observers exposed themselves simultaneously while conducting surveillance of a nearby road. Sarah engaged both targets in rapid succession, eliminating the observation post's capability and disrupting enemy intelligence gathering in the area. The success of this mission led to additional requests for Sarah's participation in similar operations. Military commanders began to see her as a strategic asset, whose unique combination of medical training and shooting skills could be applied to various challenging situations. Sarah found herself becoming something that didn't officially exist in military doctrine: a combat medic who was also a precision marksman. As word of Sarah's dual capabilities spread throughout military circles, she began receiving attention from the highest levels of command. A classified report detailing her performance had reached the Pentagon, where military strategists were fascinated by the implications of having a soldier who could seamlessly transition between saving lives and taking them with equal precision. The phone call that would change everything came on a quiet Thursday morning. Sarah was conducting routine medical training with new arrivals when Lieutenant Colonel Harrison summoned her to his office with unusual urgency. Waiting for her was Colonel Rebecca Shaw, a special operations coordinator who had flown in specifically to meet with Sarah. "Sergeant Martinez, your unique skill set has caught the attention of some very important people," Colonel Shaw began. "We're forming a specialized unit that combines medical and tactical capabilities for high-risk operations. You would be working with the most elite soldiers in the military on missions that require both healing and precision elimination of threats." The offer was both tempting and terrifying. Sarah would receive advanced training in special operations techniques while maintaining her medical specialization. She would work with teams that operated behind enemy lines, providing medical support for wounded team members while also serving as a precision marksman when situations required lethal force. Sarah requested time to consider the offer, but she already knew what her answer would be. The experiences of the past months had shown her that she could make a greater impact by embracing both aspects of her abilities, rather than limiting herself to just one role. The military needed soldiers who could adapt to complex situations and fill multiple roles as circumstances required. Her final month at the forward operating base was bittersweet. Sarah continued her medical duties while also participating in advanced shooting training with visiting special operations instructors. She had become a legend among the soldiers stationed there, and many credited her with saving the base during the enemy attack that had started her transformation. Torres, who had become both a friend and mentor, helped Sarah prepare for her transition to special operations. He shared insights about working with elite military units and the psychological challenges of operating in high-stress environments where split-second decisions could determine mission success or failure. "You're going to be working with people who are used to being the best at what they do," Torres warned her. "They might be skeptical about a medic joining their ranks, but once they see what you can do, they'll understand that you bring something special to the team." Sarah's departure from the base was marked by a small ceremony recognizing her contributions to the unit's success. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison presented her with a commendation for her actions during the base attack, noting that her quick thinking and exceptional shooting had prevented what could have been a devastating defeat. The transition to special operations training was more challenging than Sarah had anticipated. The physical demands were intense, requiring her to master skills like parachuting, advanced weapon systems, and close-quarters combat techniques. But the most difficult aspect was learning to think like a special operations soldier rather than a traditional medic. Special operations missions required a different mindset from the defensive operations Sarah had participated in at the forward base. She had to learn to be proactive rather than reactive, identifying and eliminating threats before they could harm her team or compromise their mission objectives. Her medical background proved to be a significant advantage during training. Sarah's understanding of human anatomy helped her become more effective with various weapon systems, while her experience treating traumatic injuries made her valuable for planning missions in dangerous environments where medical evacuation might not be possible. The other soldiers in her training class initially viewed Sarah with skepticism. Most special operations candidates came from infantry or other combat specialties, and they weren't sure how a medic would perform under the extreme pressures they faced. But Sarah's performance during live-fire exercises and complex tactical scenarios quickly earned their respect. Her first operational assignment came after 6 months of intensive training. Sarah was assigned to a team tasked with infiltrating enemy territory to eliminate a high-value target, who was coordinating attacks against coalition forces. The mission required precise planning and flawless execution, as the team would be operating without backup support deep in hostile territory. Sarah's role in the mission was complex. She would provide medical support for the team during the infiltration and extraction phases, but she was also designated as the primary shooter for eliminating the target. The combination of responsibilities required her to think tactically while maintaining her medical readiness. The target was located in a compound that provided excellent security and multiple escape routes. Sarah's team would need to approach undetected, eliminate the target from long range, and then extract quickly before enemy forces could respond. The success of the mission depended on Sarah's ability to make a precise shot under pressure while operating in unfamiliar terrain. During the pre-mission briefing, Sarah studied detailed maps and satellite images of the target area. The shot would be challenging, requiring her to engage the target at a range of approximately 1,100 yards while accounting for elevation changes and unpredictable wind conditions in the mountainous terrain. The infiltration phase of the mission went smoothly. Sarah's team reached their designated position without being detected, and she was able to establish a shooting position with clear lines of sight to the target compound. Through her scope, she could observe enemy activities and confirm the presence of the high-value target. The mission required patience and discipline. Sarah and her team spent nearly 8 hours in position, waiting for the target to expose himself in a location where Sarah could engage him effectively. During this time, she provided medical treatment for a team member who had suffered a minor injury during the infiltration. When the opportunity finally came, Sarah was ready. The target appeared in a courtyard area of the compound, providing a clear shot for approximately 30 seconds. Sarah engaged the target successfully, confirming the elimination before her team began their extraction procedures. The success of this mission established Sarah's reputation within the special operations community. She had proven that her unique combination of medical and shooting skills could be effectively applied to the most challenging military operations. Her transformation from medic to specialized operator was complete, but it had come at a personal cost that she was still learning to understand. 3 years after that first attack on the forward operating base, Sarah Martinez had become something unprecedented in military history. She was officially designated as a Special Operations Medical Specialist, but her unofficial reputation was as the deadliest combat medic who had ever served. Her record included over 40 confirmed eliminations at ranges exceeding 800 yards, while simultaneously maintaining her role as a life-saving medical professional. The psychological toll of her dual role had been significant. Sarah had learned to compartmentalize her emotions, switching between healer and killer as situations demanded. She had developed coping mechanisms that allowed her to function effectively in both roles, but the internal conflict never completely disappeared. During quiet moments, she still wrestled with the moral complexity of using the same steady hands to both end lives and save them. Her most challenging mission came during her final deployment. Intelligence had identified a terrorist leader who was planning a major attack against civilian targets. The individual was hiding in an urban environment, surrounded by innocent people who could become casualties if traditional military approaches were used. Sarah's unique skills made her the ideal candidate for eliminating the threat with minimal collateral damage. The mission required Sarah to operate in a crowded city, establishing a shooting position in a building overlooking the target's location. She would need to wait for the target to expose himself, while ensuring that no innocent civilians were in the line of fire. The shot would be technically challenging, but the greater difficulty was the moral responsibility of operating in an environment where a mistake could harm innocent people. Sarah spent 2 days in position, observing the target's movements and waiting for an opportunity that would allow her to engage him safely. During this time, she provided medical assistance to team members and even treated a local civilian who had been injured in an accident near their position. The contrast between her healing and killing roles had never been more stark. When the opportunity finally came, Sarah made what she knew would be her final shot as an active operator. The terrorist leader exposed himself in a location where Sarah could engage him without risk to surrounding civilians. The shot was successful, eliminating a major threat while preserving innocent lives. It was the perfect ending to her operational career. Following this mission, Sarah made the decision to transition away from active combat operations. She had accomplished everything she had set out to achieve, and had proven that the combination of medical and tactical skills could be devastatingly effective. But the personal cost of maintaining her dual role had become too high to sustain indefinitely. Sarah's transition back to traditional medical duties was more difficult than she had anticipated. After years of operating at the highest levels of military special operations, returning to routine medical work felt limiting and unfulfilling. She had become accustomed to the intense challenges and life-or-death decisions that characterized special operations missions. The military recognized Sarah's unique value and created a new position that would allow her to continue contributing without the psychological strain of active combat operations. She was assigned to train other soldiers in the combination of medical and tactical skills, sharing the lessons she had learned during her unprecedented career. Her training programs became highly sought after by special operations units throughout the military. Sarah developed curricula that taught soldiers how to think tactically while maintaining their primary specializations. Her courses covered everything from advanced medical procedures under combat conditions to precision shooting, techniques for non-traditional snipers. Sarah's story became a case study in military academies and special operations schools. Her career demonstrated that soldiers could excel in multiple roles when circumstances required adaptation and innovation. She had proven that traditional military specializations could be expanded without compromising effectiveness or professionalism. The recognition Sarah received for her service included several prestigious military awards, but she was most proud of the lives she had saved, both through her medical skills and her shooting abilities. Every soldier who had survived because of her medical treatment, and every innocent civilian who was protected because she eliminated threats validated her decision to embrace both aspects of her capabilities. Years later, Sarah reflected on the journey that had transformed her from a young medic from Texas into a legendary special operations soldier. The path had been unexpected and often difficult, but it had allowed her to serve her country in ways she never could have imagined. She had learned that sometimes the greatest service requires embracing contradictions and accepting complex moral responsibilities. Her legacy extended beyond her personal achievements. Sarah had opened new possibilities for how the military could utilize soldiers with diverse skill sets. Her career demonstrated that specialization and cross-training could coexist, creating more versatile and effective military units. The small town in Texas where Sarah had grown up eventually learned about her military service, though the classified nature of many of her missions meant that the full extent of her achievements would never be publicly known. She returned home as a decorated veteran who had redefined what it meant to be a combat medic. Sarah's story became an inspiration for young people considering military service, particularly women who were interested in roles that had traditionally been dominated by men. She had proven that dedication, skill, and adaptability could overcome any barriers or limitations that others might try to impose. In her retirement, Sarah continued to serve her community through civilian medical practice, but she never forgot the lessons she had learned during her military career. She had discovered that sometimes the greatest service requires making difficult choices and accepting responsibilities that others might avoid. The local hospital where Sarah worked as an emergency room physician became known for having one of the most capable trauma specialists in the region. Her military experience treating battlefield injuries translated perfectly to civilian emergency medicine, where she saved countless lives through her quick decision-making and steady hands under pressure. Sarah also established a nonprofit organization that provided medical training to first responders in rural communities. She traveled throughout Texas and neighboring states, teaching paramedics and volunteer firefighters advanced techniques for treating traumatic injuries. Her programs were credited with improving survival rates in areas where professional medical care was hours away. The organization grew to include partnerships with military veterans who shared their specialized skills with civilian communities. Former special operations medics, combat engineers, and communications specialists worked together to provide training that bridged the gap between military and civilian emergency response capabilities. Sarah's personal life found balance as she married a fellow veteran who understood the complexities of military service. Together, they raised 2 children who grew up hearing stories about service, sacrifice, and the importance of using your talents to help others. Sarah never told them the full details of her combat missions, but she taught them about courage, responsibility, and making difficult choices when lives were at stake. The Barrett rifle that had changed the course of her life was eventually retired to a place of honor in Sarah's home. It served as a reminder of the extraordinary circumstances that had revealed capabilities she never knew she possessed. Sometimes, late at night, she would look at the weapon and remember the weight of the decisions she had made and the lives that had been saved because of her actions. Sarah's influence on military doctrine continued long after her retirement. The concept of cross-trained specialists became more common throughout the armed forces, with soldiers receiving training in multiple disciplines to increase their versatility and effectiveness. Her career had proven that the rigid boundaries between military specializations could be crossed without compromising professionalism or mission effectiveness. When military historians eventually told the complete story of Sarah's service, they would describe her as a soldier who had redefined what was possible when circumstances demanded innovation and courage. She had proven that ordinary people could achieve extraordinary things when they were willing to step outside their comfort zones and embrace unexpected challenges. The small shooting range at the forward operating base where Sarah had first demonstrated her remarkable abilities was eventually named in her honor. A plaque commemorated her service and reminded future soldiers that sometimes the most unlikely people prove to be exactly what a situation requires. Her story became a legend that inspired soldiers to develop all their capabilities rather than limiting themselves to narrow specializations. Sarah Martinez had started her military career as just a medic from a small Texas town. She ended it as one of the most decorated and respected soldiers of her generation, having saved hundreds of lives through both her medical skills and her precision shooting. Her legacy proved that when faced with impossible situations, ordinary people could discover extraordinary capabilities within themselves and use those gifts to serve something greater than their own comfort or safety.